Hello, partyist of the peoples, and welcome to the second episode of the 7th season of Law and Candor, the podcast wholly devoted to pursuing the legal technology revolution. I'm Bill, here with Rob, as usual. In celebration of Women's History Month, we have an all-female guest speaking takeover this season, and could not be more excited to get this next guest on the panel so you could hear from her. But before we do, we must first focus on the portion of the program, you know it, you love it,
Sightings of Radical Brilliance.
The part of the show where we bring to you the latest news of noteworthy innovation and acts of sheer genius. For this episode's sightings, we are focused on the tech that will invade our lives in 2021. Rob, what do you think?
Well, first of all, I love this article. It was in the New York Times, in the Tech's Fix. It's called The Tech That Will Invade Our Lives in 2021. And what I liked about it is that, come on, the new smartwatch, smartphone, whatever, they always get all the attention in the tech world. But this article is about the things that in the last year have really made our lives better, even though, kind of like me, Bill, they work more behind the scenes. And it's about time that we all get a little bit more credit. And, you know, an example of that would be things that make us not have to interact with each other as much in times of COVID, or make it easier to work from home. That's really what the focus of the article is. And it starts with, you know, some of these applications like Square, you know, that make touchless payment possible, but kind of moves into other things, you know, that are enabling remote work.
Yeah, and I think that this is just an inevitability of a full year of the entire workforce being home, right? And they touch on Wi-Fi getting smarter with Wi-Fi 6. I mean, because not only are you home, your kids are home, and you're all competing for bandwidth across your Wi-Fi. So it's not necessarily getting faster, but more efficient and smarter, and distributing bandwidth to the several devices, so that when your kid's inside playing games on his computer or doing homework on his computer, you know, you can still record your podcast. You can still, you know, do your Zoom call for work. You can still be on your Teams call with the rest of your co-employees. Things like this, it's interesting. COVID has affected every aspect of our lives, and what we are downloading and the technology we are relying on is no different.
Definitely not. And if anything, my wife is not happy about this because it's only fueling my Amazon.com addiction. You know, this last year has been tough. I mean, there's just no reason to go to a retail store anymore. It's crazy.
I mean, if I had a dime for every cardboard package that showed up at my house during the first 6 months of COVID, oh God. Anyway, but it is funny because they're also talking about different ways technology helps us to avoid germs. I mean, it sounds silly, right? But, you know, touchless payments, like you were talking about earlier, Apple Pay, things like that. And then we saw things like, who wants to go to a Bikram yoga studio? And, you know, you want to get your sweat on in a room during a pandemic? I don't think so. So we're seeing a lot more Zoom classes around exercise. You know, look at Peloton. I mean, Peloton blew up. I mean, if I could have bought stock in Peloton last January, go back in time, I would do that. Probably would also go back in time and buy Bitcoin, but that's a separate podcast. Anyway, interesting stuff. It's an interesting read. Like Rob said, it's in the New York Times. Brian Chen wrote the article. Shout out to Brian. Great article. Interesting take on technology, how it's evolving in the age of COVID, and how it's going to affect our lives, not just with the latest gizmos and gadgets, but with stuff that's really going to help us embrace the work from home, the touchless pay, separate us more from the rest of mankind by doing everything over online rather than in person. Exactly. Oh, God, I can't wait to shake someone's hand again. Anyway, great article. Check it out. New York Times, January 6, 2021. Brian Chen. Title of the article is The Tech That Will Invade Our Lives in 2021. Check it out. All right, so now we're going to get to the guest speaker portion of our program. I think you're really going to enjoy this one. Give it a listen. Check it out. Let us know what you think.
Hello. We're excited to have you for the main part of our podcast today. And we're especially excited to have Julie Johnson of Align, who is going to talk to us about innovation and legal operations. And Julie, this is something that we've been doing lately, you know, just to kind of mix things up a little bit. Instead of just telling us, you know, your name and your title, maybe could you share a little bit about yourself and just how did you end up in this legal operations arena?
So spent about 15 years on the legal billing and collection side, and this is way back before anyone knew what e-billing was. I was at the firm when our first client came to us requesting e-billing, and everyone sort of freaked out and wondered, what is it? I had to laugh because I had a manager that insisted probably for about 10 years it was too complex. There's no way that us billers would ever be able to do it on our own. So I joke with her when I see her at events nowadays, like, yay, I implemented an e-billing tool on the company side. So it's been fun.
It's like the law firm partners that still do their research in books, and they go, this whole Lexis Westlaw thing's not going to take place, not going to happen.
Oh my gosh. Well, I can remember like begging the attorneys, like, there's no need for you to send me invoice cover letters anymore. But they love the process, printing it out on the letterhead, signing it, bringing it down. I'm like, nobody ever sees this.
I was going to say it was like my mother when I passed the bar. She was like, no way, it's not going to happen. But,
yeah.
Just kidding.
Julie, talk to us a little bit, something that everyone's gone through this past year, and that's the effect that COVID has had on legal departments and budgets in general.
Yeah, I would say for us, we were sort of already on that trek of trying to find ways to save money on the law firm side. I actually was under a new CLO. We put into place many cost savings initiatives, whether it be alternative fee arrangements and whatnot. And I think as far as COVID goes, we've also tried to sort of help our in-house attorneys to be a little more self-sufficient. So pulling in, research tools like Westlaw or Bloomberg, making sure that they were empowered to sort of self-serve on some of the stuff that they were always going to outside counsel for in the past.
I guess it's nice when, you're already kind of on that path, but certainly COVID, I think, accelerated it for everyone. And how did you approach that, with suddenly, even more pressure to innovate and automate? What was kind of your process?
Yeah. So with us, it's more about, giving the avenue for people to sort of reconnect in this new world, right? So started out when this first all happened by creating the water cooler or the team sort of happy hour team site that was more for fun and less for, the work back and forth. But of course that opened us up to, okay, this was so easy. Why aren't we collaborating on a team site for work items? I think it's definitely given us the opportunity to sort of look at, where are we storing knowledge right now? Are we storing it? Do we have playbooks in place? Do we have ways to make sure knowledge can be transferred from one person to another when there's change going on? I know our department's a little bit junior as far as technology and innovation, but over the course of this year, we've implemented a legal hold tool. I think it's given us the time to actually pause and find solutions where when we're all in office, you don't really have that opportunity, right? But now I think people are finding more time in their days from not commuting, from not pausing to stop and talk to people in the hallways. And it's given us a chance to sort of redeploy those efforts and help, make things a little easier for everyone around us.
And since you've been in the industry a while and you've been able to sort of, I'm sure you've developed relationships. Are you seeing any innovations? Do you do any peer comparisons and reach out and see what other innovations and solutions being implemented around legal operations?
I actually do. We recently started working with Up-Level Ops and Value Strategies, who are legal operations consultants that have both been on the in-house side before. And then I also try to make sure that I stay in touch with my existing network. I've been pretty fortunate to work at a couple large companies and have kept in touch with the operations teams there. And I've also tried to insert myself into like the Associative Corporate Counsel Legal Ops groups. So for example, I recently was on the East Coast and inserted myself into the Carolinas region ACC Legal Ops group, got to know them. So I feel like legal operations is not a new function, but there's a lot of passion and drive. And I notice it's a group that is not unwilling to share with one another what's working and what's not. So definitely staying in touch, asking people what tools they're on. If we're investigating a new tool, I'll reach out to a couple of my former colleagues. Hey, have you used this platform before? Do you think I could see it in a production environment before I go and adopt new technology? I want to make sure, do I know someone who's used this before and has it worked for what they were trying to solve for? Because I don't want to put my team in the position of investing in something that's not really going to work for us.
And Julie, one thing that we really try to do with the podcast is give practical ideas and advices to people. Do you have any recommendations that you would give to others that are looking to adopt technology and be more efficient?
Yeah, I think I would recommend that people, first of all, stop and take a summary of what am I trying to solve for. So like, for example, our team, there's a few different areas we're trying to solve for right now. We're looking for a platform to not only share with our internal in-house business partners on the legal and quality regulatory team, but we're also trying to put together an outward-facing platform so that our business partners have somewhere to access the information that we need to share, or where we can create frequently asked questions, or put together a wiki of, who's who amongst the legal team and who do I need to go to. We've tried the Teams route. We're now starting to investigate more specific technology and look at, what technology is there out there that we could put in place that's not too expensive. We're sort of in that discovery mode right now. I definitely sometimes feel like I'm in demo overload.
I bet. Julie, This has been great. I think, it's something that we see legal operations having been really affected by COVID, which you touched on, something that's where innovation is really starting to play a key role. Thanks for doing this. We do have one more question for you. What we've been doing this month in celebration of International Women's History Month, we're asking all of our guest speakers just one quick question. That is, what advice would you give other women in the legal operations industry that are looking to move their career forward? And do you feel an obligation or a kinship when you see a young woman in the field coming up through the ranks to sort of offer that information, whether it's in a mentor-mentee role or something even less formal than that, and just offering advice?
I do. So in my role, I'm a non-lawyer, but I've worked with lawyers over half my life. What I've sort of taken under my wing is the EAs, the paralegals of the teams I've worked with, because I want them to see that there is so much value to be added to an in-house legal team by non-lawyers. And so I definitely like to show them, you can start out as an EA and you can work your way up. And if you're the type of person who sees the gaps and knows that they want to help solve the problems, you can take your career very far.
That's great advice. Julie, it's been so great to have you. If maybe I could just summarize for a minute. I think the most important thing we've learned is that Julie can implement an e-billing system. So if you are a former coworker, know that did happen. Second, while COVID accelerated things, you were already on the path of looking for ways to innovate and improve in legal operations. And I think that definitely gave you, a big leap ahead of, I think, of a lot of other people. It's good to rely on legal operations consultants. They can be really helpful. And I love the point that you made about, having that personal network that you can go to and that is willing to help. And I'm sure that you give them as much as they give you. I think that was a great recommendation. Of course, stop and assess, what your priorities are and make sure that you're focusing on them. I think the last point you raised about, what it really comes down to is, what kind of value can you contribute is a lot more important than, what your background is or whether you're a lawyer or non-lawyer. I think that was great advice. And again, just really appreciate you joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Julie. This was great.
Very fun.
Can't get enough of Law and Candor. Who can blame you? I mean, come on. This is the greatest podcast in the history of podcasts. If you agree, please subscribe to the show for future updates, future news. Leave a review. Leave a topic that you'd like us to talk about. We may or may not listen, but leave it anyway. What else are you going to do? You're just sitting at home. Anyway, Listen, Law and Candor, we appreciate the support. Download, subscribe, recommend, resubscribe, unsubscribe, rate us 5 stars, leave a recommendation, leave a note, suggest a topic that you'd like us to check out. Really appreciate the support, everyone.
Yeah, and to have a review from someone other than Bill's mom, it would be nice. I think it would help give us some more credibility.